Alright, you need to take notes while I go through this 9-5 with you, and it can be paused at any time if you're not able to keep up. Now the concept today in 9-5 is exploring factoring, and factoring is the reverse of FOIL. So it's the reverse of FOIL. And you've been doing FOIL for sections 9-2 and 9-3. Okay, so these are magic squares, these next four squares. You recall the work that you've done, maybe you've done, not with me, but in some other class or a previous math class. The magic squares, there's going to be some relationship between these numbers. And hopefully in this first magic square that you see is already finished, you see that these two numbers multiply to give you 10 and they add up to give you 7. So we go to the next magic square, what multiplies to give you 9 and adds up to give you 6. Well, that would be another 3. What two numbers? These two numbers are going to multiply to give you 8, and they're going to add up to give you 6. And these two numbers will multiply to give you a negative 6, and they'll add up to give you a negative 1. Okay, how does this relate to these expanded versions of a binomial product? In other words, the trinomial that you get when you do FOIL. So if we FOIL these out, you're going to get x squared plus, now your outers and your inners will add up to 7x. Then plus 10. And if I do this one shortcut wise, we get x squared plus 6x plus 9. The next one, you have x squared plus, outers are 4x, inners are 2x, that gives you 6x plus 8. And then you have x squared, outers are 2x, inners are negative 3x, so that adds up to a negative 1x minus 6. Well, these numbers actually come from your magic square. The 2 and the 5 are the two numbers, and these that are going to be multiplied and added. They multiply to give you the 10. Let me back this up. They multiply to give you the 10, which is the top number, and they add up to give you the 7, which is the bottom number. And in the next one, the two 3's are on the sides. They multiply to give you the 9, and they add up to give you the 6. Again, these 2 and the 4 are the side numbers. They multiply to give you the 8, and they add up to give you the 6. These two are the side numbers, and they multiply to give you a negative 6, and they add up to give you a negative 1. So they're going to multiply to give you this last number, and they're going to add up to give you the middle number. Okay, let's work backwards now on your magic squares. Working backwards, we're going to give you the product, and then the sum. This is product and sum. So what two numbers multiply to give you 6 and add up to 5? That would be 2 and 3. Two numbers that multiply to give you 12 and add up to give you 8. That would be a 2 and a 6. It doesn't matter if you say 6 and 2. What two numbers multiply to give you negative 15 and they add up to give you a positive 2? One of them's got to be negative. So we'll say it's going to be a negative on the 3, but a positive on the 5. These multiply to give you a negative 15, they add up to give you a positive 2. What two numbers multiply to give you 27, add up to give you negative 12? Now they're multiplying to give you a positive, so these two numbers would have to be a negative, because they're going to add to give you a negative. So I'd say a negative 9 and a negative 3 multiply to give you a positive 27, and they add up to give you a negative 12. Now you can see how this is called factoring. It's the reverse of FOIL. So I'm going to break down this x squared. Each quantity will need an x times an x will give me my x squared. If all the signs are plus, we've got plus everywhere. The factors, the multiply to give you, you're going to multiply to give you 6, you're going to add up to give me 5. Those will be a 3 and a 2. Two numbers that, okay, first of all, sorry, back up. To give you your x squared, you plant an x and an x. If they're going to multiply to give you a positive and add up to give you a positive, they're going to be positives. Numbers that multiply to give you 12, add up to 8. You can just use your magic square up above. It's your 2 and your 6. Multiply to give you an x squared, you plant your x and x. To multiply to give you a negative, one's got to be positive, one negative. And we already did it in our magic square. You got the positive on the 5 and you have a negative on the 3. Last one, x times x gives you x squared. To multiply to give you a positive and add up to a negative times a negative is a positive. And when you take a negative plus a negative, it's a negative. We have it in our magic square. It's a -9 and a -3. Now when you FOIL this back out, you're going to get what you started with. So from the bottoms up it's called FOIL, from the top down it's called factoring. So you just factored that trinomial into two binomials squared. Okay, I think you need to practice some. I'm going to do them up here, and then you can check. So for the first one, start with your two quantities, plant your x's, then you have your signs are all positive, so make them positive, and then numbers that multiply to give you 46 and add up to 13. So factors of 42. 42 and 1, 21 and 2, 14 and 3, 7 and 6. So it's the 7 and the 6 that'll give us the sum of 13. Okay, now you do the next one and just look up when you're done. Alright, now this next one has a negative in it. You already have listed the product of 48ths right here, actually including this 6 and 8. So to get our x squared, we have an x and an x. To multiply to give you a positive, but add up to a negative, these both have to be negative. Negative times negative gives you a positive. Negative plus negative adds up to negative. Alright, so we have to think of a pair that will subtract. Both of them are negative, and they're going to give me a 14. So this is going to be a -8 and a -6. You could put -6 and -8. It doesn't matter which one comes first. Last one here, you have your two quantities, x in each. Both will be negative to multiply to give you positive, as well as add up to a negative. Now factors of 40, 1 and 40, 2 and 20, 3 no, 4 and 10, 5 and 8. Well, it's the 5 and the 8. If they're both negative, they'll multiply to give me a positive 40 and they'll add up to give me a -13. Alright, let's do the next row. X and x, one of each, because they're going to multiply to give you negative. They have to add up to give you positive. Factors of 18, 1 and 18, 2 and 9, and that's the 1. If I make 9 positive and 2 negative, these will multiply to give me the -18. These will add up to give me the +7. X in each, one of each sign, so they multiply to give you a negative. 18, we already listed 2 of the factors. I'm going to use those same 2 factors. I'll put a negative on my 9 and a positive on my 2. These two will multiply to give me -18, and they'll add up to give me a -7. X in each, one of each sign to multiply to give you a negative, positive and negative. 45 is 45 and 1. 2 doesn't go in there. 3 and, what was that meant? I'm sorry. 15 and 3. And 9 and 5. So of those, if one's positive and one's negative, this pair of 15 and 3 will work, but you need to put them in the right place. The 15 needs to be negative. The 3 needs to be positive, because when you multiply them, you get a -45, but when you add them, you get the -12. Okay, last one here. X in each, both negative. They'll multiply to give you positive, and then they'll add up to give you a negative. 45, we already listed the factors. The two that will add up to a negative 18 right here, if you make it a negative 15 and a negative 3, those multiply to give you a positive 45. They add up to a negative 18. Okay, one other thing that you should have noticed is the signs. If you want a positive and a positive, when you do these two quantities, they're both going to be positive. If you want a positive multiplied together but add up to negative, then a negative times a negative will give you a positive, and when you take a negative plus a negative, it will give you a negative. And if you have, they multiply to give you a negative, you're going to have one of each. Now the one that has to be larger is the one that's next to the positive side, so I'm going to put large here. When you do a multiplying to give you a negative, and then they add up to negative, to multiply to give you negative, you're going to have one of each. But then when they're going to add up to give you a negative, this one's going to be your larger one. Alright, so you get to work and look at your notes, look at your book, and do your section 9.5. Good luck.